Hey, everybody. This is Debbie. Welcome to my channel. You guys, I'm sad right now. And you're probably going to think this is really silly. There's these shorts. I don't even know the name of the channel. But there's these shorts on YouTube where they show an actor and it's like, I was however old when I died, but once I was, and then it goes backwards for like all their awards and the roles they played and everything. It's not always dead people. Sometimes it's just older people. But I just watched one and it was Sean Connery, and I did not know that Sean Connery died 5 years ago. I thought he was still alive. So I'm a little sad right now. And I felt stupid too because I didn't know he was dead. So, and I also confirmed Brian Wilson did die. 82. Age 82. And earlier someone said that Tina Louise died. Tina Louise is not dead. So that is not true. But Brian Wilson did pass away. So I am going to hello everybody. I'm going to start the trial. Turn off my camera and mourn Sean Connery.
All right, Mr. Brennan. Jurors, hopefully it'll be comfortable enough in here this afternoon. The court officers has done a great job keeping the air out of the courtroom. So.
Dr. Rentschler, you wrote a report back in February 2024?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And in that report, you provided a number of opinions, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Do you remember if you opined or had the opinion that the injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's arm would not result from impact with a non-damaged tail lamp cover?
I believe that's correct, yes.
And the amount of force required to fracture the tail lamp cover would result in extensive soft tissue and likely bony injury to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
Correct.
And so your opinion back in 2004 was that if a person's arm were to cause the damage to that taillight on that Lexus, you would expect to see extensive soft tissue and likely bony injury.
Yes, soft tissue referring to ligaments and tendons of the elbow and shoulder, correct, and the wrist.
And so you're saying not superficial abrasions, but in the arm?
Yes, when you look at, and you can see from the testing we did for this case, for this round that the arm extends and you have contact with the arm, you would expect at those speeds damage to the tendons and the ligaments, the elbow, the shoulder, likely the wrist.
Is that we looked at or that we saw and you offered the words of the medical expert. There is no MRI studying any ligament damage, is there?
There are no MRIs that I'm aware of, no, sir.
And x-rays wouldn't fairly depict some of those internal injuries that you're referring to, would they?
As I described before, it can show laxity of the joint, but it normally doesn't show the actual soft tissue damage itself, no, sir.
And a crash test dummy is different than a person, isn't it?
Certainly it is, yes,
No
sir.
muscle,
That's correct.
no ligaments.
That's correct.
The crash test dummy does not react or respond like a human being.
Well, it does to a certain extent, yes.
There are differences.
Certainly there are, yes.
And so when you're looking at a crash test dummy, you can agree that there are significant differences between what you might see on the dummy's arm and what would maybe happen to a human being's arm on the inside.
There can be. That's why you have to look at the acceleration and the force, and that's primarily what the ATD is utilized for.
But focusing on the actual observation of the arm, you would agree, doctor, that looking at a crash test dummy arm is not comparable to actually looking into a human being's arm with an MRI and seeing if there's any damage on the inside.
No, of course, that they're not the same, no, sir.
You were speaking about references earlier. You did have a chance to see Dr. Welcher's report, didn't you?
I did, yes.
And in his report, there were a number of references, weren't there?
There were different references, but I think maybe 26 within his report.
In addition to his information, weren't you?
I was, yes.
And in those gigabytes, there was different references to different materials, wasn't there?
Well, first of all, there were only 26 references in his report that he cited to for his opinions. There was material contained within the batch of documents that they sent over. There was a bibliography or CV of different papers that he had submitted, I think 20 pages of papers that weren't referenced in the original report. And the most recent paper in that AutoPed packet was from 2004. Most of them were from the 60s and 70s, but there was an additional packet of information.
When you read his report and saw his references, did you look up the references?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay. And when you were saying earlier that there was only one reference, you were referring to the pink test, correct?
Well, I was referring to, there's only one reference specifically with respect to automobile pedestrian impacts.
When you looked at his references, sir, did you have an opportunity to read any of the articles?
I did, yes, sir.
And many of them are peer reviewed?
Yes, sir.
In addition, when you looked at the 20 pages of materials he sent over that were not in his report, how many references did you read out of those 20 pages of references that he offered?
Well, I didn't read any because they weren't referred to in his report for his actual opinions in this case.
Do you know whether or not he considered those references or whether he read those references?
We're going to allow that.
He didn't cite to any of those references in either the PowerPoint presentation or in his report. That's the knowledge I have of whether he reviewed those.
So you don't know what he considered or thought, do you?
I know what he cited to and he referenced to in his report and PowerPoint. That's the extent.
The
Yes.
question is, you don't know what he was referring or reading or relying on other than what was in his report cited, correct?
Well, right. If he referred to the other articles, yes, certainly other articles in the 60s, 70s, and 80s he may have, but they don't really pertain to what happened in this case.
How many references were in your May 7th report?
Well, I think there were, let's see. Uh, 26, I think.
Those 26 references, are they offered in your report to suggest some type of support for the proposition that you're promoting in the report?
Well, they support the opinions or the methodology or both with respect to what I've offered in this.
The
matter.
reason why you put a cite in is suggesting that it supports whatever proposition you're footnoting on that. Correct?
To some extent, or the methodology or some information pertinent to that opinion, yes, sir.
Regarding crash test dummies and prediction in soft tissue injury, you provided 3 sites, didn't you?
And soft tissue injuries?
Yes.
Can you show me where that it says that, sir?
Footnote 11 of your report, Mr. O'Keefe's right arm kinematics during impact with the Lexus are inconsistent with producing the documented cuts damage to his right sleeve, as well as the abrasions to his right arm. Did you write that?
Yes. And which one was that again? I just want to make sure. What was the number?
You cited footnotes 24, 25, and 26.
Yes.
And when you cited 24, 25, 26, did any of those three sites, in fact, those are the only sites that you cited for that proposition, correct?
Yes, sir.
So your entire basis of sites is limited to those three articles or three papers, yes?
For reference, it's not, the testing obviously proves differently, but yes, for that one comment there, those were the three that were provided, yes.
Starting with number 24. When you looked at 24, did it ever suggest, this paper, did it ever suggest that it was appropriate to use a crash test dummy in the material of a crash test dummy to make an analysis or determine whether or not there would be documented damage to someone's skin?
No, it didn't. And that's not what I did in this matter.
In this article you cite supporting the claim that you made, there is nothing in here that would suggest that a crash test dummy is appropriate to use in making that determination, is there?
There is not, no, sir.
In fact, in this article, it gives you details on what actually should be used to make that analysis, doesn't it?
No, sir. Certain ways to look at sharpness and how lacerations are caused.
This is titled Skin Tissue Cuttability and its relation to lacerations, severity, indices. You know that, you cited that.
That's correct. And it looks at specifically, I think, laminated glass and its ability to cut the skin.
Number 24 in your site, correct?
Yes.
And it tells you 3 types of skin were examined and used for this type of study. Post-mortem human skin from 2 different body sites, Camios leather, and goat skin. Is that correct?
Right. To look specifically at laminated glass and it's the cuttability of that type of glass.
And the reason why the study is giving those suggestions is because a crash test dummy's arm and fabric is different than how real would respond. Yes?
Different, sure. I didn't do that type of comparison.
You did not do any comparisons with any of the suggestions in the site that you cited in support for your proposition, did you?
Oh, I did not evaluate that. No, not in that manner. No, sir.
And then you cited number 24 or 25. You cited a book, Forensic Pathology, correct?
Correct.
And in this forensic pathology book, entire book, it never suggests that crash test dummies are appropriate to use when making this type of analysis, does it?
Correct. And that's why I would not do that type of analysis with respect to lacerations. That's not what my analysis involves, sir.
My question was, nowhere in that book does it say that crash test dummies are appropriate for analyzing skin lacerations on a collision, does it?
Sure. I mean, for that sake, it doesn't say it's inappropriate either.
And then you also cited an article, your third article, Understanding the Acute Skin Injury Mechanisms Caused by Player Surface Contact During Soccer. Did you cite that?
I did, yes.
And again, there's nothing in there that talks about the appropriate use of a crash test dummy when you are trying to support the proposition that someone's arm is consistent or inconsistent with producing cuts and damage in a collision.
That's correct.
Are you aware of literature relative specifically to the use of the hybrid 3 crash test dummy, which was used in this case?
There's a lot of literature with respect to the hybrid dummy, yes.
Have you ever heard of the person by the name of Stanley Bakatis?
I don't recall that I have.
Okay. How about Harold Mertz? Isn't he a leader in the field with crash test dummies?
He is, yes.
Right. Would you agree that we also do not believe the current instrumented arm configuration is suitable either for prediction of soft tissue injuries. You agree with that?
Well, for laceration, sure, it shouldn't be used for that. It shouldn't be used in that manner. That's why I don't use it in that manner.
Do you have any source that says it's suitable for determining superficial abrasions?
I do not, no, sir.
You have no other sites whatsoever supporting that proposition, which led inevitably to one of the opinions you gave to this jury. True?
Not true. That's a misrepresentation of what I performed, the testing I performed.
I don't have any information that Dr. Welcher ever claimed that his test was intended to represent exactly how Mr. O'Keefe's arm was when he was hit. Do you?
Well, the evidence I have for that is that in his report, he says that the orientation and position of the lacerations are consistent with the orientation position of the taillight cover. And then right under that, he has reference to that test that he performed. So again, with respect to the arm impact at all, that's the only test that was performed to look at the arm and the taillight cover. If it doesn't represent the actual position, then apparently he has no idea how the arm was positioned or how it was impacted.
Let's get back to my question.
Yes.
Is there anything where Welcher has informed you or written that he is intending to represent the actual arm angle of John O'Keefe when he was hit by Alexis?
Again, I just described what he has in his actual report. So he didn't write specifically that that's what it's intended to do. It seems he's inferred that. And again, that's the only test that he's performed or referred to in this case.
You inferred that.
Inferred that that's how he believes that the arm was positioned?
I think we understand your perspective is that the only test he performed. But what I really want to get at is your conclusion, your assumption that Dr. Welcher was suggesting that there was a specific arm angle that occurred in this case that he was identifying. You don't see that anywhere in his report.
Well, it would be pretty odd if the one test he ran didn't actually represent what he thought happened. I don't understand what the value of that would actually be.
Did Dr. Welcher ever represent that he was trying to describe the actual body position of John O'Keefe when he was hit?
Actually, he doesn't state that. He states very little in his report or in his PowerPoint. He demonstrates through the video of his arm like that and contacting it, and then he holds his arm up to a picture of Mr. O'Keefe's right arm to compare and apparently demonstrate that it's in the same area. But again, he doesn't actually state that opinion. He doesn't state any opinions that the contact actually occurred, except in one point, and has no evidence or foundation for that.
Would the answer to my question be no?
You would have to ask Dr. Welcher, I suppose. But if it's not, again, then I'm not sure what that test actually accomplished or represented.
You've made assumptions and then have given opinions to this jury based on your assumptions, haven't you?
I've evaluated the evidence in the one test he ran. If that's incorrect, well, then I would have to correct my opinion and my assumption and say that not only is the test not actually show what occurred, but he hasn't performed anything to actually link the arm contact to the taillight cover. If it doesn't represent that, you're right, I'd change my opinion that there's no evidence, no analysis, no conclusion whatsoever.
I'm going to try to make my question a little clearer. Is there anything in the report where Dr. Welcher has stated that the arm angle in the demonstration was in any way attempt to replicate exactly how John O'Keefe's arm was when he was struck by a weapon?
I don't believe anything's written in the report with respect to that, no.
Is there anything in the report, Dr. Welcher, anything that states Dr. Welcher was stating or claiming that he knew the body position of John O'Keefe when he was struck?
I'm going to allow that.
So no, I guess there is no opinion or conclusion that he knows how Mr. O'Keefe was actually positioned at the time of this alleged incident.
You
You're correct.
know whether Dr. Welcher has been clear that he does not know, let me say this a different way. You would agree, Dr. Welcher has never stated in his report that he can identify the speed at which Mr. O'Keefe,
He thinks the speed is, that's correct.
he never states how far, if at all, Mr. O'Keefe was thrown after being in a collision.
That's right. He does not.
When you don't know the speed, you don't know the body position, and you don't know the angle of the body at the time of collision, you cannot replicate a collision with crash test dummies to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Well, you're right. You can't prove that that actually occurred. That's the basis. Yeah.
So,
If you don't have the
You can-
information, you can't replicate what happened. You can't determine, you can't state to any conclusion of accuracy what actually occurred if you don't have the evidence.
so if you were to do a crash reenactment, say reasonable to replicate scientifically reliable to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, would it?
Well, if you perform a test and you state this is what I tested and this is the angle, then you can certainly say these are my conclusions. But if you don't know the throw distance, conclusion that it didn't occur, if you don't know how something occurred, how can you conclude that it actually occurred? It scientifically makes no sense.
You go, Rentschler, for God's
So-
sake.
If an expert does a crash test and they can't determine to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that it replicates the actual collision, you test and for jury.
Very briefly.
If there was no collision, I think it would be reasonable to put it in front of a jury that we don't know. StreamYard, quit telling me to wait. I don't want to wait. We might crash, y'all. Jill broke it. It's all Jill's fault. Your comment got stuck. I was just kidding. You didn't break it. Come on, StreamYard. Share. Didn't your mother teach you better?
In reading the reports and evaluating the PowerPoint, would you agree there is no statement by Dr. Welcher ever in anything that you reviewed that he is claiming or stating that his paint test was supposed to be a reenactment, moving or holding his arm at the time of a collision?
He did not state that. That's correct.
Well, then what was the point?
Made your criticisms that you've done testing regarding Dr. Welcher. You don't have any evidence, any statement by him that he was trying to reenact.
One test with the arm like this. That's the only evidence that was presented in his opinion or in his case. I have not seen any other have occurred. Specifically said in his report on page 9, he said, I conducted an accident reconstruction and biomechanical and engineering analysis of this matter. If he did not recreate how he was positioned, if he did not determine the speed of impact, if he did not determine how Mr. O'Keefe's body moved, if he did not determine where he if that wasn't the intent of the test, I'd be curious to see what the actual intent was.
Is the answer no, it's not in there?
I think I just said that at the beginning of my answer, sir.
Knock it off.
Times is described in your world as chaos, right?
I suppose it could be under certain circumstances.
Testing is limited to the variables that you produce, but real life sometimes has variables you can't predict. Is that fair?
It's possible. Yes.
Is it more than possible?
I don't know.
I'm asking you.
It depends on the variables. It depends.
Have you seen
Possible you can't prove that it actually happened. So this may affect it, but there's basic information you have to know to perform that type of an analysis.
So my question again is, are there scenarios where variables are impossible to predict?
Yes.
Have you had cases yourself where there are variables that are impossible to predict? On basis to know whether or not there are variables that sometimes you can't predict, don't you?
Sure. As I said, it depends on the case.
When you did the crash tests in this case, did you actually, were
No,
you even there when they happened?
I was not. No, sir.
So you're relying in part on Dr. Wolf's work.
I am, yes.
Made mistakes. Would that affect your conclusions?
It depends what mistakes they are.
When you had, or when Dr. Wolf had the crash test dummy in test E and F on a forklift, you remember those?
I do, yes.
When it's on the forklift, it does not allow the crash test dummy after being struck to move, to be thrown, does it?
Actually, if it's a force acting on it, it will like, so if there's a force acting, which direction it moves backwards, it can move.
Well, my question isn't direction, it's can it show the throw? Can it throw or move the crash test dummy in its natural course after the collision to a resting spot?
No. In those tests, though, there wouldn't be any throw.
If a crash test dummy is restrained by a forklift,
Hey, Brennan, let's go out in the parking lot and hit you at
if a crash test dummy is
miles an
restrained by
hour.
a forklift,
Throw, that's correct. It doesn't.
it doesn't allow an observation of the crash test dummy to turn or fall, does it?
No, it does not. Well, no, actually, it turns, sure. I mean, it can spin.
How about fall?
No. And a crash test dummy would just fall down anyway.
Have you seen crash test dummies where it is held in place electromagnetically, and when the collision happens, then the dummy can move? Have you seen that?
I have, yes.
Have you seen, excuse me, have you seen crash tests with crash test dummy where there is a light? I'm sorry. Have you seen crash tests with crash test dummies where there is a light string and somebody cuts the string moments before the impact or a second before
I
the
have,
impact?
yes.
Was that done in this case?
It wasn't. I'll speak slower and a little clearer.
If you answer my question.
I just did answer it. I said it wasn't.
When the crash test dummy is held by a forklift and the car hits it, it doesn't replicate the drag that the car will have on the.
If there's any drag, because it's on like a pendulum. So if there's any drag pushing it forward, it's going to sway that way. It's going to move the.
I'm sorry, I have to take a moment. That was so good. That is my new favorite moment from this trial. I'm sorry, I'll speak slower. It wasn't. Hey, Robbie.
The dummy. It's not going to move at the distance that it actually would. If there was any distance, it would move it. But you can actually see the motion, and you can see in the testing, the 24-mile-an-hour testing, there was no motion, which is not unexpected for that type of a test.
And a fender vault, isn't there?
There, yes.
A fender of a mass collision, isn't that true?
That's right.
It is impossible to replicate defend them. Isn't
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to replicate, and it depends looking at the injuries or how someone was positioned. So if you know how they were positioned, you can try and
Guess what I forgot to do during lunch? I forgot to clear my cache and my cookies. Dang it. I'll do it before I turn the computer off today, you guys. You might have to remind me, but I will try to remember. Yeah, he's ticked. I would be too. It's ridiculous. He's being obtuse on purpose because whether you understand physics or not, and I will admit, I don't get physics. I mean, I understand the nature of physics. Like, I'm not stupid. The equations and all, though, that right over my head. But the questions, I even explained it. Like, Travis, he's got Tourette syndrome. I think he's a little autistic. Like, he's a little slow. I love him to pieces. He's smarter than me in some areas. Like, we're both neurodivergent. I'm not saying that my husband is stupid. We're both neurodivergent. We both have our areas where we don't get it, and other areas where we're super smart. But like I was telling him about Brennan saying about the car pushing the arm, and Wolf saying that the arm would go at the same speed of the car or faster. And then Brennan asking, well, wouldn't the arm, can the arm go slower than the car? And the shards from the taillight press into the arm? Like, even Travis understood that could not happen. And I was like, okay, well, if Travis can get it, then the jury can get it. And I told him, I'm like, the guy kept saying, I'm not understanding your question because it doesn't make sense in the physical world. And this is the same kind of thing that's happening now. These guys are top-notch physics people, experts in their field of biomechanics and engineering and physics. And Brennan is just a lawyer, which there's nothing wrong with being just a lawyer, but he's not making sense. These questions don't make sense in the physics universe. And so these men are now getting very ticked off at these stupid questions. I mean, yeah, the ham sandwich questions were stupid, but now the questions don't make sense to their brains because their brains think different than Brennan's brain. You know what I mean? Like, it's like apples and oranges. They don't understand these weird questions that Brennan is asking them. Or maybe they do, and they're just trying to make him look like the fool that he is, that he even brought this case to trial. At this point, it's comical. Ooh. Thunder shook your building? Are you safe? Please be safe. Be in a safe place. Yeah, he's getting mad, but that was great. That was so great. I'll speak slower. Yeah, he thinks Brennan is just a flat out idiot right now.
in your PowerPoint, you cited
Exactly.
an article, Vehicle Pedestrian Collisions, Validated Models for Pedestrian Impact and Projection, correct?
You
yes.
don't
And
speak
you
stupid.
put snippets up on, and And these snippets talk about an engagement with the pedestrian. The reason why we took out a piece that falls between the paragraphs.
I don't know. It was relevant.
Did you cut out some front where the impact of the upper body with the vehicle front? Alternatively, the
Okay, I took the banner off. Maybe that'll help. Yeah, it's summer in Florida, so it rains every day. But it usually doesn't last very long, and it's usually it thunders. Which I know that it has to have lightning somewhere when it thunders, because right, thunder's the sound of the lightning hitting the ground. But it's weird because you never see it. It's big drops and it doesn't last. What did I do? I hit the wrong button again. Uh-oh.
One could put it there. I mean, there's a number of different possibilities.
Uh-oh, where'd we leave off?
now you said in your differential diagnosis you considered all evidence.
So ask the question again.
Okay. No information about the angle of Mr. O'Keefe.
Uh-oh, where'd we leave off, guys? Where
Across the entire arm, that's where it's the least amount of pressure if we're talking about force over area.
I don't know where we left.
I do, yes, sir.
Okay. There's a difference between taking a small object and putting pressure on the body as opposed to a larger, wider object, isn't there?
Well, it depends on what it's contacting. And certainly not a difference when you look at the size of that impactor and the size of the knuckles and the metacarpal bones.
So for example, if somebody took a book and hit somebody off the forehead, it may or may not leave a mark. But if they use the same force and they took a high heel, the heel of a high heel, and hit somebody, there would likely be more damage.
Well, soft tissue, but if the force is the same, you would expect the fracture to occur. You have to look at the distribution, you have to look at the strength of the bone, and you have to look at the overall force that's being applied.
Now, you said in your differential diagnosis, you considered all evidence. Did you say that on direct examination?
I don't believe I did. I believe I case.
So you didn't consider phone data?
Has nothing to do with biomechanics or accident reconstruction.
Did you consider tech stream data?
I'm going to allow that.
I'll strike it. Did you consider Apple Healthcare data?
I like that idea, Judy. Yeah, I know it was shortly after. I'll speak slower, but I can't find it. So we're just going from here. I don't know what happened. Sometimes when I click the play or the pause button, because I try to click it really fast when it crashes, I hit the scrubber bar and it goes all the way back to the beginning. And I try very hard to not do that, but I do that anyway. So, and usually I can find the spot again, but it's just so it's all bleeding in together now because it's all stupid. It's not evidence anymore. It's stupid. It's just everything that comes out of his mouth is stupid. It's like it's questions like, do you remember what you forgot? You know, it's stupid. Do you know what you didn't know? It's stupid. That's the kind of questions he's asking.
Videos, E and F. There's debris fields after the collision and the taillight breaks, isn't there?
So, first of all, there's debris in the yard. What that's from? Is there a collision? Was there a collision? Where did that come from? Where it was positioned? That's all conjecture.
Oh, debris field. In a collision, have you seen debris fields?
I have, yes.
Have you seen debris fields where a taillight would shatter?
I have, yes.
In fact, in your videos, yes or no, after the collisions in video E and F, there are debris fields, aren't there?
There are at a certain point, yes, sir, absolutely.
And so when you're looking at your studies, do you consider debris fields?
It depends on the evidence. It depends on how it was collected. It depends if it is accurate or reliable. But from a biomechanical standpoint, no, you don't need to look at the build or a debris field of tail with the injuries or position or the movement of
Could I
an
have Exhibit
individual.
73, please?
That. No. He just freaking
You
interrupted
see
him,
that,
just
sir?
like dismissed
I do.
Do you know what that is?
him.
Looks like possibly part of the taillight cover.
Right. Is that an alleged part of taillight cover, or do you think that's part of the taillight
Son
cover?
of a
sir?
bitch.
I don't know specifically. It might be part of the actual taillight
Well,
cover.
when you studied this case and you looked at all the evidence and all these different things, did you look at these photos and see that alleged piece of taillight shard recovered from the front yard area of 34 Fairview Road? Did you consider that?
Well, I don't. Was that part of the one that was recovered by a leaf blower or not?
When you were doing your ample study, sir,
Yes.
what I'm asking you is, when you were looking at all the available evidence,
Jackson, save this poor man.
of this alleged taillight shard on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road, were you aware of this?
No. Oh, I was aware that there was debris in the yard, but again, that has nothing to do with biomechanical analysis. If you can't prove that the impact happened, then everything after that doesn't actually matter, does it? Because all of that would be from something else. So unless you prove the core issue at this case, the contact, the post-impact movement, the head injury, without proving that, everything else is ancillary to what you're attempting to conclude.
Do you have any evidence in your biomechanical studies how this alleged piece of taillight shard ended up on the front lawn of 34 Fairview?
I don't know, sir. I didn't evaluate or investigate that.
Could I have Exhibit 78, please? Did you see this photograph, sir?
I do, yes.
Is that part of a red taillight shard or an alleged piece of a taillight shard?
It looks like it, yes.
Did you consider this in your biomechanical studies, that this taillight shard was found in front of 34 Fairview Road?
Was found. Can you give me a precise distance from where the body was found and where that was found with respect to Mr. O'Keefe, with respect to a reference point?
Did you consider this, sir?
There is none. So, no, I did not consider that.
Do you know how this taillight shard got there?
How it got there?
Yes.
That wasn't part of my analysis. There are certainly different possibilities of how that actually occurred.
Exhibit 99D. Do you know what that is, sir?
It looks like part of the light assembly.
Mr. O'Keefe's hat?
Oh,
Did you
that's
look at
his
this
hat.
photograph?
I see now, yes.
Did you know he was wearing a hat that night?
I did, yes.
And did you consider how that hat ended up on the ground in front of 34 Fairview?
No, sir, that was not part of my biomechanical analysis. There's a number of ways a hat can end up in a yard.
Is one of those ways being in a collision with a Lexus?
I suppose that's a possibility, or someone could put it there. I mean, there's a number of different possibilities as to when or how a hat may appear in a yard.
Who do you think put it there?
Well, I have no idea. I haven't seen any evidence of how it got there, and frankly, it's immaterial to a biomechanical analysis.
Do you have a theory you want to share with us about planting evidence? Is that where we're at, sir? By the x-rays you looked at earlier,
When I was on the case initially for the first trial.
no mention in your report about reviewing those.
It says I reviewed medical records and reports. That's how I actually word in every report I have. I just put generally that. It refers to medical records and reports, which includes x-rays, MRIs.
Hey, Brennan, do you need an ice pack, honey? Are you feeling a little butt hurt right now? I got an ice pack I can let you borrow.
Exhibit 74, please. Have you seen this photograph?
I have, yes.
Okay. In your study, did you determine how Mr. O'Keefe's shoe ended up near the curb?
No, sir.
A mechanical, Brennan.
Have you seen this photograph before?
I don't know that I have.
Have you ever seen any container that had tail light shards that matched the defendant's Lexus that were removed from his sweatshirt and his shirt?
Collected like that, but yes.
In your extensive study of the detail of this case, did you know that these pieces of plastic were removed or scraped from Mr. O'Keefe's clothes, specifically his sweatshirt and his t-shirt? Did you know that?
I was aware that samples were recovered. Yes.
Were you aware that these samples were consistent with the broken taillight of Miss Reed's Lexus? Did you know that?
Yes.
Did you do any I'll try again.
Okay.
When you looked at these taillight shards that were projection shards that were consistent with the break in Miss Reed's, they got into Mr. O'Keefe's clothes. Objection. Same objection.
I understand the objection. Word it differently. Start with the different one.
Yes, you are. You see these pieces of broken plastic, don't you?
I do.
And you understand that these were found in scrapings, and you understand that these broken pieces of plastic are
I do, yes.
in your studies and reenactments. Did you make any determination how these pieces of broken plastic got into zero-piece clothing?
No, when you look at those studies, first you have to know how the incident occurred. Then you can look at that and determine, if you want to, how that may have occurred. Because otherwise, there's on the sweatshirt, without knowing how this happened, you can't just then look at other evidence and try and predict how it happened. You need the actual evidence to look at the event. This all goes to the event. You need contact with the arm, I guess, apparently.
I'm so sorry, guys. It is being especially ornery this afternoon. I don't know what else. Well, I do know what else, but I can't do it now.
Could I have exhibit a plastic consistent with the broken taillight of the defendant's car? Do you understand that?
I believe so, yes.
And do you understand this is a photograph of these broken pieces of plastic under a microscope?
Okay.
Well, I'm asking you, do you understand
Well, if
that?
that's what you're
I don't
telling me, then
I don't want you to rely on me. If you didn't see them, it's okay.
I don't recall if I saw those or not.
Have you seen this picture?
I don't recall seeing it, no.
Now looking at this photograph and seeing this broken pieces of plastic under a microscope. Analysis, forming your opinion whether or not there was a between Ms. Weed's car and Mr. O'Keefe.
Again, if you can't do a proper biomechanical analysis, then that evidence is not consistent. You can't determine how it occurred. You can't say that that's consistent with it. You can't just look at certain evidence and not do a proper analysis. If you can't even tell that an impact occurred, you can't look at evidence and say, well, this proves that it occurred. In order to say from a biomechanical and accident reconstruction standpoint that an impact occurred and here's how it occurred, you have to understand the mechanics and dynamics before it. This could certainly support that finding and those conclusions, but by itself, I don't know of any methodology in any study or peer-reviewed article that says you can just look at alleged evidence and then form an opinion as to whether an impact occurred.
Can you see your eye that parts of those broken pieces of plastic are sharp?
They look sharp.
Do you disagree? Think they're not sharp?
Well, I don't have an opinion as to that, sir.
We'll take a look. Objection.
Sustained.
Get that to me kindly. You tell me whether you think those pieces of broken plastic are sharp. Objection.
I allow that.
I guess they look sharp. I have no idea if they are or not. It's under a microscope. When you actually put things under a microscope, it looks much different, and it's much different than looking at the normal eye.
Perhaps that can help. Not under a microscope. If you pay particular attention to the larger one in the middle, that looks like a shark's tooth. You see
Yes.
that one?
Yes.
Do you think, doctor, that some of those appear sharp?
Some of those appear sharp, could possibly cause a laceration, sure, as opposed to an abrasion.
Do you think that any of those could cause an abrasion?
I don't think that you could get a consistent level of superficial abrasions along the entire arm of minimal depth of less than 0.5 millimeter through impact with the glass. To have that minimal force on every part of the arm to only cause superficial abrasions would be highly unlikely.
Do you think some of those sharp pieces, if they were larger pieces, cause an abrasion?
It's possible if you had enough punctures and holes in the sweater to correspond with the abrasions on the arm, that would be, I suppose, that could be a possibility.
In your testing, not to belabor it, I'm just going to show you one. I want to show you video E.
You've already belabored
Go to video E.
everything you've talked about.
Stop. In video E, who determined that angle, Dr. Wolf?
Yes, well, we positioned it just so it would impact in the general area of what was shown in Dr. Welcher's paint test study, which apparently is irrelevant and doesn't show the alleged position of how the arm was at impact. But yes, we positioned it in that manner.
When you say we, did you have input on the positioning of that, or did Dr. Wolf do it?
Well, I had input into how we were going to position it. It would probably be both of us, I would say.
So you and Dr. Wolf chose to position the arm straight out, correct?
In that test, we did, yes.
Is there a glass in Randy's hand?
There is not, no,
A drinking glass? No?
no.
In any of your studies, did you have a drinking glass in Randy's hand?
We did not have a drinking glass in the dummy's hand, no.
And you see when the taillight is shattering, those red things falling down. What are those?
Those are part of the taillight.
Continue a little bit, please. Stop. Did you count how many taillight pieces broke?
We didn't count the taillight pieces. We counted how many punctures or holes there were in the sweatshirt, which was 0.
If you had done this test and changed the arm angle, do you expect the damage would look different as far as the breaks in that taillight?
Well, we conducted a number of tests. It may look somewhat different, sure.
If you conducted this test and moved the arm angle, not another test, this
Yeah.
test, but you moved the arm angle, do you expect that the break would look different?
That the break would look different?
Yes.
It could look a little different. I mean, certainly the breaks looked a little different in the test, but they were comparable to each other.
You do not know how John O'Keefe was standing that night, do you?
Well,
Objection.
No, I'm going to allow that.
You do not
How
know
he was
how John
standing that-
O'Keefe was standing that night, do you?
if he was standing, if the impact occurred, then no, nobody knows how he would have been standing.
You would not know what his arm angle was, would you? You would not know the exact speed of any vehicle that hit him that night, would you?
Objection.
Sustained.
The debris, the broken taillight, is consistent or a different direction?
What do you mean consistent or
Is it
different?
all going in the same direction, or is it going in different directions?
No, there's some spread to the debris.
So the pieces don't all fall right in a pile with each other, do they?
They do not, no.
Continue, please. Stop. Do the majority of the pieces land on Randy?
No, they do not.
And so as they fall, if Randy were to fall, many of those pieces would not be among the immediate area of his body, would they?
If the dummy fell right there, no, they would not be.
Now, the dummy can't fall because the dummy is on a forklift, correct?
It's suspended like a pendulum, correct?
And you see in your test that the tail light at what you say is 24 miles per hour can be broken without the dummy's knees touching the vehicle. Isn't that fair to say?
That's correct, yes.
You can't tell the full movement and fall of this dummy the way you've set up this test, can you?
I'll speak slow.
Well,
It's my
knowing the
favorite
physics, you can
part.
certainly determine or estimate where it would be, but no, you could release it and it would fall primarily straight down. It would twist and it would fall down.
Is there something that could affect the dummy if you let it fall? Is there something that could affect it after be?
Like what?
Could his feet be and then hit another object like a curb?
Well, there's going to be very little lateral movement of its feet, but even if it did, then it's still going to fall over right where it is.
Can you continue, please? Can you see the feet, doctor?
Yes,
Are they twisting?
they are, yes.
Is that because of the rotation of Randy after he struck?
Yeah, that's the rotation of Randy. And again, yeah, as you said, that's not a normal person because there's no normal. You aren't going to twist to that extent because this is a dummy which is suspended with just a little contact on the
And
ground.
after being contacted by a vehicle enough to break the light, could it cause a person to stagger backwards?
I mean, you're making some suppositions here. There's no evidence that would occur in this case, and not if you're spinning like that. You're not going to stagger backwards. First, you're going to spin if you get hit with your arm, as I described in my direct. But is it possible? I can't say it's simple, but there's no evidence of that.
Could a person stumble backwards after being hit?
I'm going to allow that.
What do you mean by backwards? Because you'd be spinning. So what direction is backwards?
Could a person get their foot caught on a curb, sneaker come off, and then stagger backwards and fall on their head?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
Doctor?
Can you answer that?
I mean, I guess you could somehow predict or have a possibility of almost anything happening. You could say someone could get hit by a car and do a couple of somersaults into the yard. I mean, there's no evidence of that. So it's just a supposition, but I won't say it's impossible.
You think John O'Keefe did somersaults in the front yard of 34 Fairview? Is that what you're telling us, Doctor?
No, I don't think he even got hit by the car, sir.
That's not what I'm asking. I've heard that. I'm asking you did somersaults.
There's no evidence of
Okay. Oops.
Yeah, I think I like Dr. Rentschler. I like his attitude because right now he's just looking at Brennan like, dude, you're reaching. But I do think he needs to minimize the eye rolls and the noises he's starting to make. Bye, Jill. Be careful. Has a brain in their head. They can that Brennan is just he's reaching. He's just trying to make scenarios. We don't know what happened. That's reasonable doubt. Okay.
Was pulled. Could I have exhibit 166, please? Did you see the cut on Mr. O'Keefe's nose, the left side of his nostril?
I do.
In your analysis of whether there was a collision with the defendant's Lexus, did you consider or know or a piece of broken plastic was pulled from Mr. O'Keefe's nose?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that.
One question.
I'm going to allow that.
Your Honor,
So hold on. Let's get an answer. Your objection's noted, Mr. Jackson.
I was aware there was some piece of material allegedly pulled from the nose, yes.
Allegedly pulled from the nose?
Yes.
Okay. And that alleged piece of material, were you aware that it was perhaps a piece of glass or broken plastic?
objection.
Are you aware of that?
That's not an evidence. That is not the evidence.
So
Class.
hold on, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Brennan.
I can
do you have a
reword
quick-
it.
Okay.
Please.
You're welcome. Are you aware of that object that was pulled from Mr. O'Keefe's nose? What material that was?
I believe it was glass.
Did you want to know in your assessment about collision where that came from?
Well, I did evaluate that, and it's actually entirely inconsistent with coming from an impact with the vehicle.
Can we have Exhibit 52A, please? Do you know what that is, Doctor?
It's hard for me to see from here. I believe that's the drinking glass.
A drinking glass. Do you
Yeah.
know where that is in relation to where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
I believe it was found in the vicinity of where he was found.
And could I have Exhibit 195, please? You recognize that?
That is another photograph of the drinking glass, yes, sir.
197A, please. B. C. D. And in your assessment, did you know that a piece of glass that fit the broken drinking glass was found in the street area in front of 34 Fairview Road?
Yes, sir.
98, please. A little more, please. Do you know what that is, sir?
It's hard for me to tell
Straw.
Does it
back
look like a drinking straw?
It's a straw.
Okay, the black, that does appear to be a drinking straw,
Have
yes.
have you seen
Stupid
that before?
straw.
I've seen that photograph before.
And you appreciate that is in front of 34 Fairview Road?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
And sir, in your analysis, in your reconstruction analysis, did you consider the broken glass found near Mr. O'Keefe's body? The suggestion glass is found in his nose, and that glass that fit the broken glass was found on the street. Did you consider all those things in your reconstruction analysis?
Well, my biomechanical analysis, I did consider especially the glass in the nose, yes, and whether that could have been as a result of the impact.
A result of what?
A result of the impact with the vehicle.
When did you find out about the glass from Mr. O'Keefe's nose? When did you learn that?
I don't recall specifically.
But was it before you came and testified last time, or was it before this time?
I honestly, I couldn't tell you. I know it was before this time. I don't know when I found out about it.
Weeks ago, months ago? Could you turn the lights on, please?
I have no idea, sir.
You don't know if it was weeks or month ago?
I don't remember with that specific piece of evidence when I found out about it.
What do you mean you don't remember it? Have you seen it before?
While I evaluated certainly for my report for this case, I don't know if I had known about it prior to that.
Is it mentioned anywhere in your report about the piece of glass in Mr. O'Keefe's nose?
No, it's not.
When you received that information, did someone tell you about it? Did you listen? Did you watch? How did you evaluate this evidence?
It might have been in an interview or something that it was pulled from his nose, I believe.
Okay. So you saw and listened to something?
I believe so, or was made aware of it.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, sir. I had asked you at the beginning of your examination whether you denied that receiving information certainly helped prepare to understand what was going on during the trial. Do you remember those questions?
With respect to the trace DNA, correct?
Okay. May I approach?
Yes.
April 20th, 2025.
I have never wanted 4 o'clock to get here so bad. I feel so sorry for this guy.
Yes.
Uh-oh, what I did do that.
You testified a few times under oath,
I wouldn't get within arm's length of
I
him
had
uh,
right now if
to-
I was Brennan.
Yes, sir.
and you testified recently for a short bit in April, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Yeah, because you made
On
him.
April 28, 2025, did you testify in this very courtroom
I believe I did.
under oath,
Yes, sir.
like the oath you took today?
Yes, or yesterday.
Now, when I read this, I'm not attributing this in any way to the defendant's attorneys. I'm going to read you this just for clarity. You were asked, did they inform you about witness testimony? And what did you say, sir?
They did inform me, yes, about testimony in situations and events that came forth in the trial that I was not aware of.
Those are your words?
Yes, sir.
Page 125, line 7. I'm going to ask you if this is your sworn testimony, sir. On page 125, line 7, I'll read the question. And if this is your answer, you should read the answer. Were you asked, and by calling and raising issues and telling you information, even if you weren't requesting it, it helped prepare you for your trial testimony, didn't it? What did you swear?
I said it certainly helped prepare me to understand what was going on during the trial. Yes.
To that, Brennan. You already asked him those questions.
I have no further questions.
Thank you,
Mr.
Jesus.
Jackson? Okay.
No, they are not. I do,
Oh,
yes.
wait, sorry.
They
Whoop,
provided information.
I do. Yes.
sorry. Dang it.
They
I have no further questions.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Well, crap, Debbie.
Okay.
they provided in the prior trial, correct?
Correct.
No one associated with the defense, correct?
That's correct. No associated with you, and they provided information. And again, it let me know what was going on. It didn't affect my opinions. It in no way changed anything for what I tested.
To get just answer the question. Angela.
And with regard to, I appreciate that.
Don't
I'm
lie,
gonna ask you
you
a couple
Beverly. You're the
about
judge.
They being or beginning,
Yes.
actually, the employer that you work for. Okay, the client.
Side of the car. So you vault over top of the fender.
My sin.
What you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
Okay. Did you notice in the injuries,
What the fudge just happened?
do you know or understand that?
And the
I'm going to ask you if this is your sworn testimony, sir.
Yes, this is still the defense's case in chief.
If it was coming right at you and it hit the car.
is that what's described in the industry as a fender vault?
That is part of a fender vault, yes, but it's at an angle. So instead of going direct back, it's because if the person's walking across and you get hit, you fly kind of back and over the top of the fender.
Did that set of circumstances, physics, have anything to do with your analysis in this case?
No, none whatsoever. The profile of the car is completely different, the back of the SUV.
You were asked several questions about the debris field in the test F as in Foxtrot, that
StreamYard, you're getting on my last nerve right now.
You were shown several photographs of
I do, yes.
I'll get to that in a second. You were also shown some photographs of pieces of plastic that were claimed to have been found at 34 Fairview. Clear plastic, piece of red plastic, correct?
That's correct, yes.
In your view of all data in this case, do you know when the pieces got those pieces of plastic at 34 Fairview?
I do not.
Were you aware in your review of the police reports that none of the plastic that you were shown was found at the time John O'Keefe's was discovered and the area was initially searched?
That is correct, yes. I was aware of that.
You indicated that the cut on Mr. O'Keefe's nose, the right side of his nose, was inconsistent with coming from a vehicle, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe why you came to that conclusion?
Well, if you're standing at the back corner of the vehicle and it strikes the arm, and let's be clear, if somebody wants to say where the arm was or how it's positioned, if they're claiming the last result of the fractured taillight, it has to strike the be standing like this. The debris goes forward with the vehicle. So it with your arm like this, it already passes by the person. And if there was any contact with the right side of it, it can't come out and then make a right turn and then somehow embed itself on the left side of the nose. That's entirely consistent with the fracture and how the glass and the cover would actually move.
Dr. Rentschler, you were asked a series of questions about a hat. Do you remember that?
I do.
About some shards of plastic material, correct?
Yes.
About a drinking glass?
Yes.
About a drinking straw?
Yes.
Doctor, if there was no collision, does any of that matter in terms of reconstruction in this incident?
It does not.
Why?
Well, because if there wasn't a collision, it wasn't that debris or those items weren't a result of that impact. You can explain how that got there, I believe, easier than if you can't explain how the impact occurred. If the injuries don't match up, if you can't even prove what happened, then you can't use information or evidence if you have no idea how it got there to try and prove what you don't even know what happened. Scientifically, it makes no sense.
Scientifically, the question that has to be answered is, was there collision?
Objection.
Sustained, you have to watch the following question.
Of course. In your expert opinion, based on all of your review of all of the data in this case, all of the testing that you've undertaken, do you have an opinion as to whether or not there was a collision with John O'Keefe?
I do.
Objection.
Yeah, I'm sustaining that, Your Honor.
In your view, was there evidence of a collision with John O'Keefe?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were any of the injuries that you saw
Your Honor, I
suffered by
object
John O'Keefe
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
consistent
because it's
with
devastating to
having
my
been struck
case.
by the
Overruled.
subject?
Good call.
No, they are not.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
I do.
Thank you.
Doctor, you just said that you do not believe that there was a fender vault collision. Could it
No,
have been a clip?
it was in the back. Stupid.
Could it have clipped Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
Wasn't even a collision.
Not hit him, but clipped him.
Well, I don't believe that's consistent with the evidence and what occurred. I mean, someone can get clipped by a car, sure, but in this case, no, I don't believe the evidence indicates that's what occurred.
The glass. When you learned of the information of the glass in Mr. O'Keefe's nose, when do you think it was that that glass was pulled from his nose? What date?
I think it was the morning when his body was discovered.
January 29, 2022?
Yes, sir.
Somewhere around 6:15 a.m. Is that your understanding?
Sometime when his body was discovered, that's correct.
Do you know or understand that, did you see any evidence that Mr. O'Keefe had a drinking glass outside of 34 Fairview Road that morning after he got out of the defendant's Lexus? Do you understand that?
What do you mean evidence?
Drinking glass. Did you hear anything about that in your review? About
What evidence would there be? Is there a video or a photograph, you mean, of him holding a drink glass? Because otherwise there's a drinking glass there, but there's no evidence that he had it.
we have a clip, right? Okay. Judge, can I come sidebar?
Okay. Nope. Nope. It's not gonna work. Nope.
Oh, wait. I see me. Why do I see me? Can you hear me? But I can't see but I'm not. I'm confused. Okay, that's weird. Because I can't see myself on the screen. But I can see myself on YouTube. But I can't see myself in... Weird. Well, StreamYard is doing all kinds of weird stuff.